front of all of you who are so into deep tech. I mean, so deep. I don't even know what that means. But I thought what I could do is basically walk you through an evolutionary journey of me converting from a doctor to an entrepreneur, and probably that will give you some sense of where the ecosystem in medtech is turning today. And maybe through that journey, I could talk about a few technologies that we've developed, and then maybe just walk you through that, okay? So great. Before that, I wanted to just check how many people are comfortable with Hindi here? Okay, Kannada? Okay, no, I'm also a stand-up comic on the side, so I like mixing languages and try to keep it a little free. Just wanted to know. About 10 years ago, I started my, I mean, I finished my internship, I've started my internship, finished my medicine at a government college, I mean, government hospital, it's a district hospital in Tumkur. That was my first day in the internship. I'll tell you why I'm telling this. And I was slipped into the back entry of the outpatient setting and made to sit on a chair, and the compounder is basically asking me to be comfortable. And I can see two doors, exactly like this room. There's one door here, one door here. And the door almost looks like it's going to crack, and there's something there behind. I don't know what it is. Almost like the Titanic, you know, the water's going to flow in. And this, the compounder says, "Sir, ready there, sir?" I'm like, "I'm ready, sir, everything is fine." I'm like, "Fine." Okay, and then he unleashes the door open with hundreds of patients just flowing in, all of them with a sheet of paper, and saying, "Sir, sir, no, sir, 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 no, sir, sir, BP, sir, sir, BP, sir." And I'm like, all of a sudden, this is my first day of the internship, right? Now that's how healthcare is in India. We have one doctor for 1,700 people, right? You won't even, I have not done the math, but if you count specialists, there are 15,000 ENTs for 1.3 billion people, right? This is one physician for 1,700 people. This is the healthcare ecosystem doctors basically breathe in and breathe out with, right? So in this kind of a scenario, obviously we are facing lots and lots of challenges. There are lots of clinical challenges, absolutely no shortage of clinical challenges, and absolutely no shortage of ideas. There's so many ideas that we get, because it's only obvious that if you are facing the problem, you understand it because you are in the middle of it, and you really know what will get you out of it. So it's not like you need to get a very eureka moment to think of a solution. You obviously know what the solution is, but the problem is very different here. It's like, you know, where do you find the place to solve when every time the door opens, hundreds of people lash on you, right? When you're in the outpatient theater, there are like tons of patients lying outside. When you're in your OPD, when you're in your wards, where does a doctor involved in making technologies, even though they understand the problems really well? So for me, I started off being a doctor. I come from a doctor's family. I just thought I'd be a doctor like everyone else. I didn't think as a doctor to invent solutions was really practical. I mean, you know, think about it. But you know, something changed when I got into St. John's. I was training for ENT, and like everyone, you need someone to mentor you. You need a guru. You need someone to show you the right path. So my boss, Dr. Ravi Nair, who's now the head of HCG, is a dean of HCG Cancer Hospital, a very senior ENT surgeon, looks similar to this. Basically had a very interesting way of showing me the path. Now, having worked in the rural areas, moving to a hospital like St. John's, I saw a different dynamic of patients. I used to get a lot of patients with throat cancer coming very, very late. I wasn't understanding that. This wasn't logical to me. It's a throat cancer. How are you missing it? Why is it coming so late? Here we can just offer them 3 months of life, remove their entire, you know, voice box, and what kind of care is that? So as a child, you know, I have dyslexia. I find it very hard to understand a lot of things, because of which I ask a lot of questions. And I made the mistake of asking a very senior professor a very simple question, like, "Sir, why don't they come early?" So Dr. Ravi Nair is very, you know, army trained and very, very serious. So he asked me this question, no offense to anyone, but he says, "Jagdish, तू भौंकने वाला कुत्ता है कि काटने वाला कुत्ता है?" So that's kind of the expression that I had. I was like, okay, now I have to think what's going to come after this. I obviously know biting is a lot more aggressive. Nobody likes a barking dog. So I said, "Sir, मैं काटने वाला कुत्ता हूँ." It's like, "तू भौंक क्यों रहा है? मुझे भौंकने की आवाज आ रही है. You're just barking. You're like, why can't this be done? Why can't that be done? Why can't this be done? My hair have turned gray listening to people bark. You're only barking. Why don't you bite?" So, metaphorically, it would go really bad if I actually did that. So I got his point. He's like, don't come and talk to me about this. Why don't you just go find out? How am I supposed to know sitting here? Why don't you go find out what's wrong? You go to the rural community, go find out, take a week, I'll give you a holiday. I'm like, okay, holiday, great. So I went to a couple of rural hospitals, spent about a week, 10 days, officially telling my friends, look, I've got permission to take a week off. I live in the villages for some time. Really wanted to understand what is going wrong. And what I realized was, a lot of clinical practice, because you have one doctor has so many patients, we don't really follow each and every protocol to see patients. Not practically possible when you have 200 people knocking at your door. So what happens to a throat cancer patient? He presents early just like sore throat. That's how he'll basically talk. And you'll be like, okay, this is sore throat, it's cold, everyone has it, it's viral. You always think of the common things first. Give him a course of antibiotics, ask him to take some voice rest. He comes back 10 days later, 15 days later, cursing you, saying your medicines didn't work. Then you say, okay, I'll give you something better. And then that also doesn't work. Then he goes to another doctor. The other doctor says, that doctor is not good. I'll give you a better medication. He prescribes a different company of the same drug and asks you to take it. Until a point where, all the three parties, the doctor, the patient, the hospital, realize that we are dealing with something else. We are not dealing with something regular. It would have gone away by now. And by then, somebody says, why don't you go to a bigger hospital where they can put a camera, look into your throat and see what's going on. And that's when they come to me, and then you can see this glaring red, bleeding lesion on his vocal cords, and you are like, this is cancer. I don't even need to do a biopsy. Cords are not moving. He's not going to, it's not going to be good for him. So basically, then we operate the patient, and the story's there. So here's the gap. I went back to Dr. Ravi Nair, and I said, why can't we make a device that can help this visualization really in the rural regions? He's like, you're going to bark one more time, I'm going to bite you. He's like, then I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what more can I do after this? He's like, go make something. I mean, what is the big deal? Just make something. So here's what I did. I really couldn't get why an endoscopic visualization device, which is as tall as me, costs 2 to 3 lakh rupees, is sitting in a hospital like St. John's. Why is that so expensive? And why is that not there in these rural areas? I just couldn't get it that at that point of time, mobile phones were not a very big thing, but I just thought that why can't we take an off-the-shelf camera? And could it be so hard to attach to any endoscope? I mean, it's not rocket science. There's a doctor thinking about this. So basically what I did is I took a standard Canon camera, and I asked an engineer to help me create a coupler that would attach to this camera so that that fits onto any endoscope, just so that I know if I get the same kind of view. And if I attach it to a light source, I was amazed. This was my first aha moment as a doctor. Amazed to see the same quality of image that you would probably get from that 3 lakh device. And that is the time when I really understood what business is. As a doctor, I did not know that business had such a huge margin. Okay, so with that, when I went back to my boss, this time he was like, now you started to bite. I'm going to take an anti-rabies shot. But then that's when we started getting serious. And that, for me, what started off as something to please my boss really started getting me understand that, if we could do this ourselves, it can be really, really, really different and easy. And what we could do with that device could be great. So I got very excited, and he's like, have you heard what a startup is? I was like, yeah, I know what a startup is. Form a company or something. So he's like, why don't you make a company? I'm like, boss, I'm just come to learn ENT here. I'm not going to form a company. He's like, no, form a company. I'll give you off. He's very generously willing to give me leaves for some time. So great. So what I did was I started a company. I very, very soon realized that, boss, this is not made for doctors. About 6 years ago, when I started a company trying to develop this device, had no idea how much it costs, how many people, how do you deal with engineers, what do they expect, how do they talk. I mean, every stuff like that was very, very difficult. The grant situation is so much better today that if I had an idea, it's just so easy to develop something. You'll get 50 lakhs for any good idea. And it's really, really good, the Make in India movement and the government support. Wasn't that great about 6 years ago. And really, really struggled. Stuff that I did to try and raise money, I could probably talk some other time. But realized that, this is not going to move forward well with me. So I did something very interesting, which nobody has probably done. What I did was, the design firm that was developing the product for me, I was paying them a certain amount of money to make the product. What I did was, once I ran out of all the funding, I made an offer they could not refuse. And I said, why don't you take this forward? You seem to be more skilled. I'm just paying you money and I'm struggling to do it. Why don't you lead the development and I license this technology out to you and you just give me a small fee, whatever it is. I just want this out because I really am struggling and I don't think it's going very well. Interestingly, they really liked that idea and nobody had ever proposed something to them. So there was a very atypical licensing deal with very, very small royalty, and they were like, this is a great opportunity for a design firm to take over an internal portfolio of products. And I got really happy. I was like, okay, chalo, no, somebody else is going to make it, and I can just do what I do, which is being a clinician. But my boss said that, no, boss, you've tried something, you've struggled, you've learned, failures. There must be someone teaching this formally. Someone must be teaching this process. Everywhere, people do a lot of startups and develop products successfully. Go find out if someone is training you. And yes, the government of India was actually training people at that point of time. Imagine my luck. It was a Department of Biotechnology funded program called Stanford India Biodesign. I don't know if you've heard of it. They take one doctor every year nationally. They select another engineer, they select a designer, they select a scientist. All four of us are packed into a plane and we're sent to Stanford University, where you learn a process called biodesign. And the biodesign process is a unique process. I'll walk you through it. But the biodesign course has been successfully running in the Silicon Valley. We've heard about that in the Bay Area for almost the last 15 years. And people are churning out groundbreaking technologies over there. And we were sent there to learn the process and come back. And that is when I had the second aha moment. I would say roughly 80% of the faculty who were teaching biodesign were doctors from India. Many were from Bangalore. Some were seniors, 10 years from my own medical college. And that is the other time when my neurons were like, I just couldn't understand this. We are not too different, you and I. You came from where I did. But you're doing something so different here, which I'm not able to do there. What's the difference? Tell me. So they said very simple on a couple of drinks when I got them drunk a bit to tell me. They said, Jagdish, there's only one difference between doctors there and here is the environment. If a doctor in Stanford University has an idea, he goes to the lunch area to think about his idea. He can talk to a designer. He can talk to a mechanical engineer. He can talk to an electronics engineer. He can talk to a lawyer. He can talk to a business graduate and bounce off his ideas. And people get excited by these ideas. They say, what the hell, let's just form a company and take this forward. And this university has a very straightforward, laid process if anybody wants to do that. If you want to form a startup company, Stanford University has to be given the first right of refusal. And Stanford University will take a very, very acceptable share, if required. I think it's about 5 to 10%, and sell back the technology to the inventors if they need to, if they want to spin it off into a company. That's what Google did and all that. So it's very straightforward that it's just that. But think about me in that room with 100, 200 patients. When I go to have lunch with another 100, 200 doctors, where am I talking to another engineer? Where am I talking to a designer? Where am I talking to a business person who tells me beforehand, before you form a company, make sure that you have 20 lakhs in your pocket. Don't go with 15,000 rupees, right? Who is there to tell us this? That is the difference. And that's when I understood when I came back from there is that creating, forget the innovation, I'm telling you, when you understand the problem, the idea is obvious. And everyone has ideas over here. I'm not saying that nobody is capable of getting great ideas. It's about the machinery to get this all the way out. And the most important element of that machine is for a doctor to have that engineer, designer team ready first. Then think of the idea, then develop the product with them. And that is the learning that I came with that really changed the trajectory of me as a doctor. Because when I came back with all these new connections, the first thing I did was I helped this design firm sell it further to Medtronic India. And Medtronic India wanted to use a device for screening of health, ear, nose, throat diseases with health workers. And the product is called EntraView, and it has screened over 200,000 patients today using health workers for ENT diseases in the northern part of the country. And that is when I got another license out. And with my team from Stanford Biodesign, because we had a very good engineer and designer team, we were working on hepatobiliary or liver diseases, liver failure problems, and we developed two technologies. One was a low-cost liver biopsy device. Other one is a very, very simple device to remove fluid that collects from the abdomen. You'd be very intrigued by the way it is done in India today. if a patient has this fluid that's collecting into the abdomen, this patient, if it's a male, will look like a pregnant woman. Primarily because the liver cannot filter out all the proteins, and because of that, fluid moves from the blood compartment into around the abdomen. There's so much of fluid that's collecting. Doctors basically take an IV set. They ask the patient to poke it, hold it here, and it's like, don't move it for the next 45 minutes to an hour. And then they take a Bisleri bottle like that, and they ask someone else to keep it below, and then they wait for it to drain out. And you see patients really trying, "Arey, ja nahi raha, idhar se maar rahe hain," ye sab kar rahe hain. And you have a needle getting closer and closer to your intestines as that fluid is going away. That is not a joke, my friends. You get peritonitis, you die in next week. You perforate your intestines, you don't even want to know what happens after that, right? But that is the way we do it. We just made a simple kit. It's a mechanical kit. It's like an IV set. You put an IV needle, but you take out the needle and the sheath remains. We just did that. You put a needle in, you remove the needle, let the sheath be inside, a sheath that does not kink. It has multiple holes. And then there is a pressure system that makes sure that fluid comes out at a particular rate. It's as simple as that. And stuff like this just gets pulled into the market. In fact, this got licensed out to an Indian disposable devices company in a matter of 6 months because it's just so straightforward. But they just didn't have the bandwidth to develop something like that on their own. The liver biopsy device is actually formed into a startup company in Bangalore, launching next year. It's a company called Indio Labs in Whitefield. Do go say hello. Very, very high-tech machinery developed to make liver biopsy safe and quick. Right? So these were the two devices that we developed with the Stanford team. And learning this mantra of creating team first, I actually got the opportunity to run an internship program for the government of India called Stanford India Biodesign Internship. What I did was, again, recruited about 12 engineers and designers from various parts of the country, divided them into teams, and with each team invented a different technology. Because these teams are ready to take them off as companies if they are worthy of it. But what happened is, before they could decide to form companies, they actually got licensed out, which is a great test for the biodesign process, which I haven't told you yet, is that if you identify the need first and then think of the solution, then the market will pull it and you don't have to push it. That's really their hypothesis. So they have a very simple way. How do they identify problems in the biodesign process? A doctor, engineer, designer, business graduate spend 2.5 months in the hospital observing problems. You're just standing at the back, there's something happening there, and you're just observing. Very hard to do for 2.5 months. And that is very, very important because most of the times we are impatient as innovators. Doctor, what is the problem you're facing? Doctor, tell me what is the problem you're facing? What is the problem you're facing? I will invent it. I'll invent it. It's like that. And for a doctor, it's very different. Our entire profession is around problems. If there is no problem, we don't know what to do with our life. In that, how am I going to tell you what my problem is? I'll probably say that ECG machine is not working. I'll probably say it takes so much time and effort to get this. I'll talk about convenience-related things. It's not very easy to get critical clinical needs by asking that question. What is the problem you face? But when you observe, you see the doctor in that situation. You see a doctor who's operating and he's cut the carotid and Quentin Tarantino movie is happening. Right? And that time you're looking and you're suddenly like, oh, what is he going to do? And the doctor's like, just very cool. Give me the scissors. And then you're like, does this happen a lot? He's like, it happens every day. Then you're like, this is not a problem then. It's not a problem. But if you see something that happens and suddenly it turns bad, then you ask him, does this happen a lot? What went wrong? What could have been done? Why does this not happen somewhere else? You are then understanding a problem really well. And what happens in the biodesign process is typically you would see 200 to 300 of these problems in a span of 2.5 months. And with each of these problems, you would detail out all these circumstances really well. And then you start doing secondary research on the incidence of these problems, the prevalence of these problems. What are the other competitors developing these technologies? Why is it not in India? Is it awareness? Is it cost? Is it maintenance? Is it skill requirement? What is it? So when you get all of that and you start scoring these, the ones that come to the top are basically unmet needs that have a market that you can solve this in. And then when you think of the solution, and trust me, my friends, thinking of a solution 2.5 to 3 months after understanding the problem is not easy. Because your mind is going like, just make this, just make this, just make this. And you're like, no, make a note of it. I'm not thinking of the solution, I'll get married to it. I feel having an idea is like dating a woman. Because first, the moment you come up with an idea, you have an infatuation, you fall in love. And then the moment you talk about the idea to someone, they separate you. I've already seen this idea hundreds of places. Why are you working on this? They make it there, they make it there, they make it there. And then that separation wants you to come closer, like the hero. And then you get married to the idea, and then you don't want to leave it, and then it becomes your junoon and passion to make that product. And we have seen many startup companies fail because of that, because they just want to make something they wanted, even though there is no scope for it to actually be tangible products. And that's why in the biodesign process, we don't think about solutions until we have understood the problem, the entire ecosystem, stakeholders, everything. It's like a mathematical puzzle. If you do A, B, C, D in this A, B, C, D format and develop it, you will watch it yourself go into the market. You don't even have to push it. I get a call today saying, I heard about you make this device, when are you selling it? I don't have to go saying, buy my device, I am developing this. Because people find out when you are solving an unmet need, they know that, yes, I face this day in and day out. Give it to me. And that's where the biodesign process is working. That's why I got started getting some early exits. These are very simple devices. This is a pleural tapping device that taps fluid from tuberculosis patients that gets collected around the lungs. Again, you use needles, and because the doctor's hands are not free, you have a chance of puncturing the lung and have a very fatal pneumothorax. This is another simple device that allows passage of a feeding tube into the stomach accurately without going inside the lungs. Simple things that happen every day. If a person is paralyzed, the chances of it going into your lungs are much higher because it's upper, right? So it's very easy for it to go. But you want it to go into the food pipe, and the patient is paralyzed. He's not going to be able to tell you whether it's in the food pipe or not. It's a simple spoon. It's a deflector. You put the spoon at the back. It has a backward slant. When you pass the feeding tube, it just goes behind. Stuff like this just got licensed out 6 months to a year. And then that's when I thought that enough of this licensing. I'm getting the game. I'm understanding how to do this. I want to do end-to-end product development. And also, my wife is a doctor in Nimhans, and she's like, you're in Delhi. This is not going to work out long distance. You come back to Bangalore. So I came back to Bangalore, and I became one of the clinical directors for this company called InnAccel. It's a medical devices company with two very senior. It's a very interesting combination. Siraj Dhanani comes completely, this guy over here on my right, comes from a pure business background, sold out a company to IMS Health, wanted to do venture capital funding. But Mr. Vijayarajan, who is the head of product development for GE, comes with a huge experience of product engineering development, says that, if you invest in a startup in India, they will get the money, they don't know what to do with it. What's the point? You have to make them understand documentation for CE, ISO, product development, engineering. It needs to happen like large companies for startups. The only guy I was missing was a doctor. They fetched me in, and then I was like, this is great. I've got the team first. That's what I always wanted. So with us, what we started doing, we started creating teams of engineers and designers first, making them undergo the biodesign process. Each of these teams have spent 2.5 to 3 months in the hospital, observing problems, talking to doctors. Some have spent 2 weeks in the ambulance. Some have shifted patients from 4th floor to the ambulance. One of the engineers was ambu bagging a patient for the whole night. Stuff like that. You get completely immersed, understand the clinical problems, filter them, and then they come up with needs. And we have now a portfolio of products. I'll quickly talk to you about them. This team over here, this product here, WAP Care, addresses a huge need in the country. If you go, for God forbid, for any reason, if you're on the ventilator, for whatever reason, you can get a pneumonia because of being on the ventilator. It is called ventilator-associated pneumonia, so that no one gets confused. It's as clear as that. Imagine that 25 to 40% of the people in the ICU develop a pneumonia because of being on a ventilator, and because of the pneumonia, they have to be on the ventilator, and because of the ventilator, they develop pneumonia. See that vicious cycle. How do you break that? It's a huge problem. We came up with a smart automated suctioning device that makes sure no secretions pool, because we identified secretion pooling is the biggest problem there. And we created a device which is launching second quarter next year. The other device, SANS, is a very unique Indian problem. A lot of children are born premature because of anemia and all these malnutritions that mothers have. And these babies are born prematurely with very premature lungs. They're not able to sustain oxygen for a period of time.
the St. John's, the Apollos, being in Bangalore. But what are your thoughts on affordability and accessibility in when you talk about tier 2 and tier 3 cities of the country?
So your question is, how do we get there, or how is the innovation situation in
How do
those?
we get there? So it's
Oh, yeah.
it's very accessible. Maybe your devices are very accessible to people here,
Yes.
but who goes to a level down? Who goes to the tier
Sure.
2, tier 3?
Great question. Let me explain to you. So when we develop devices, we think of the business model first. We think of the business model even before thinking of the solution. We select the solution based on the business model. So if we know, like let's say this product called SaaS, right? This is a device designed for bottom of the pyramid. How is it going to reach there? So we have to think who the buyer is going to be upfront. And the buyer that we can reach to, who is influential and all that, would be the doctor. Most of the products that I've developed are therapeutic devices designed to be bought by doctors and hospitals, which even from tier 2, tier 3 areas, there are so many frequent conferences that you can meet all of them. Our entire marketing strategy is putting up a booth in the conference, setting up a training session in the conference. We get doctors from the most remotest parts of the country who look at this new technology, who understand the need, they try it out, and then they start buying it. That's what we are doing even for our balloon sinuplasty device, because the real need for this problem is not so much in larger cities like here, but also like in small cities, maybe somewhere in Bihar. And we have trained doctors from cities which I've never even heard existed. Because they say that this could be great for my village because people travel so many kilometers to get treatment, and so we use the doctor model. The doctor is our buyer, and it's easy to get doctors. And being a doctor talking to other doctors is even more easier. So we target conferences and events. This is like the big gray zone. In India, there are about 14 devices that are regulated by the Drug Controller General of India, and they are basically implants, catheters, and those kind of devices. If you're not one of those devices, you don't have to get a regulatory approval to sell in India. But what we do as a protocol is we do get a CE marking for all our devices, and wherever there is a US and global market, we get an FDA. But the process remains the same if we follow the documentations and all that. But yeah, to answer your question, right now, even though there is a bill pending in the parliament, if you're not one of those 14 devices, you do not need any government regulatory permissions to sell in India. You just need to have your excise duties, VAT, and taxes in place.